Hey, it's Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm. I had some emails from a few people that have watched some of my videos when I'm talking about vintage linens and showing you the various awesome vintage linens I've got from estate sales and wherever, eBay. I get a lot off of eBay. And the emails were asking, do you have any crafts that you can use vintage linens with that doesn't involve sewing? It's not like a sewing project. I do. There is some sewing involved if you want it to be, and they're wooden gift tags using vintage linens. And they're these little packs. You can get them on Amazon and probably Michael's and Walmart, anywhere that has the little wood section. I know Michael's has a big one. And they have all different shapes and sizes, and I liked this one because it had the little cool top. And the ones I'm using are, I wrote it down, are 3.5 by 2 inches. And like I said, they have all different shapes and sizes. They have round ones and square ones and hearts and stars and all kinds of things. And they all have the little hole. But I just liked these nice little rectangle ones with the little decorative rounded end. So using the little packs of the little tags, I went through my vintage linens. And remember, I buy the damaged vintage linens that usually have lots of things wrong with them, but they'll be usable parts. And remember, somebody went through the trouble to sew and embroidery all these wonderful things. Usually they're tablecloths and dresser scarves, lots of runners, that sort of thing. Anything that could be embroidered and hung on something or draped on something, that's what was done from like the Victorian era to about the 1940s. So I went through all my damaged linens, and I was zeroing in on smaller things. You know, lots of times there's big flower and stuff, but the smaller embroidered parts that were still serviceable. And I went through and I cut out, I made a little pattern using the tag. I knew I wanted, I didn't want to fill up the whole wood surface. On these 3.5 by 2 inch wood ones, I made a little rectangle pattern of 2.5 by 1 3/4, and I thought that would be good. So I went through and made a pattern, and then I went and I cut my sections of the vintage linens that I wanted to use out using the little pattern. Now, for those of you, a quick aside, for those of you that don't have vintage linens, and you could also just use fabric, you could pink fabric and layer fabric, just pretty fabric, you could do that. You could also use, I used some decorative, like scrapbook type, thicker foiled craft paper too. If you don't have any vintage linens, you can still do this idea using papers. So I just wanted to show those real quick. So these packs of wood tags come with like a jute, well, I guess it's not jute, it's just more like a twine. It's almost a paper twine, I think. Little strings. So you can use those, or you could use ribbons to use as the ties. I also used some tassels that I'll be showing you. So what did I do? Well, I cut out my portions of the vintage linen that I wanted to highlight, and then I blanket stitched around the edges. And I have videos on blanket stitching, but I'm going to also show you how to do it here in a minute. So that reduced the size after I folded in the edges. And what I did, I went through, I folded in the edges, and I ironed everything. And then I went ahead and did the blanket stitching. So let's look at some of what I did. And I also went through, some of these are plain. They're just plain and done. Like this one was an applique from an old tea towel, and that was a pretty thing. It was still serviceable. This is the embroidery, and I used just ribbons on those. But on some of these, there was a lot of open space, and this had a little boy, and he was flying a kite. The kite was like 2 or 3 just squares. It was like a cross stitch, and it didn't fit in my pattern. So I thought, well, that would be cute to make it like 3D. So I chose, this is like a like natural linen color, and so I chose just a brown thick felt and cut the little kite shape out. And then I used, in some of my other videos, I've talked about my favorite button company, and it's the Incomparable Buttons. They're made by women in South Africa who are seeking employment. So I really love these buttons, and I got a bunch for Christmas. And so this was a little, they're all ceramic, they're all handmade. This was a little dog. I thought, well, that would be cute to put that little dog on there. So that was something I added too, and I used a tassel on that one. So that way I could put it on a gift for a gift tag. You could write the person's name on the back if you wanted to, or you could just put a little sticker on the back with their name on it, you know, just a white label, and to attach it to it. I thought this way it's still serviceable after they take it off from their gift. They can use it for a bookmark or something like that. What did I use to stick all this stuff with? Before I get sidetracked, I really read the reviews. I wanted something that was a double-sided sheets that I could cut, and I cut it to the size of my piece here, finished piece. And these came in 8.5 by 11 sheets, and this was just Elizabeth Craft Designs. And I'm not really familiar with this brand, but so it's a strong hold. And it was said it was perfect for die cutting, ideal for glittering and leafing and embossing. So I knew it really must have a strong hold. Also, it wasn't recommended for kids 14 and under, so I really knew it was a strong hold, and it had good reviews. So I bought a package of that to use. I didn't want to mess with glues and anything that'd be gloppy. I wanted it really to have a nice, firm, flat hold. This one was a cute piece, and it had, you might recognize some of these if you follow all of my videos. You might recognize some of these pieces for some of my videos, but again, I used an incomparable button and I just put a little bird on there. It was really fun to go through, and here's another one, a blue and white bird. It was really fun to go through all my little doodads again, like if you watched my heartfelt heart video. These were just plain. Some of them were just pretty enough by themselves just to leave without sticking anything on it. Another incomparable button, bird. This one was fun to do. It was like a bouquet of flowers. I messed up a little bit, but then the way I positioned it made it look like almost like it was supposed to do that. And I added a little satin bow. And the way I stuck the little things on, I just cut little tiny squares of the same adhesive sheets that I used to put the embroidery work, fabric work on there, and I added a tassel on that one. This one I can't wait to use. My daughter loves cacti, and if you watched in one of the, I think it was the Santa Claus, What Santa Claus Brought Me video, there were a couple different dish towels, and someone that were like little sombreros and sort of desert Mexican sort of theme from the 40s, and on there were a couple that were full dish towels, but then they'd also saved the embroidery off of a couple of matching ones that the rest of the towel must have been damaged, but they saved the embroidery. And so on one of them they had a little burro and his sombrero, but it also had the cactus. And so I cut it out. I thought that was really cute, and I did the little green tassel on that one. I must have really liked these. I think this was a bridge tablecloth, and this one was like a larger runner. But because I have a lot of them from that, they were just nice little one, had the nice French knots, and I put tassels on both of those. Here's one that was a little bit rougher linen, and I wasn't really happy with how it turned out. It wasn't as easy to do the edges, but I had a little crochet flower that I thought looked cute on that one. It just added a little 3D effect. And I got another one. This one didn't turn out too good. It got sort of crooked. But I guess I could put it like a bow or something down in this corner if I wasn't really happy with it. So I picked out, I just had some little doodads here and there that I wanted, whatever I picked, you couldn't use like a shank button or something, but if I had a flatter button on the back, that would work good. And so some of them I used the little ties that came with everything. And some of them I used ribbons, and some of them, so I used the tassels and the ribbons and the little things that actually came with them. Some of these I have some pretty purple ribbons. So those are the little gift tags. Like I said, I would probably just put just a plain white adhesive label on the back and write, to and from on there. Or you can also get decorative foil embossed and nicer self-adhesive labels that say to and from, and you could just put that on the back too. That way, if they wanted to use it for something else, they could peel it off if they wanted to. But they're just really cute. I really like. I think that's a good size to work with. It's not too big. They make great big ones, or like luggage, different. I guess I don't know, luggage tag size. But I thought this was nice size. It wasn't too big, and it was after they used it on their gift, they could still use it for a bookmark or something. It's a nice size. First of all, let's look at how to blanket stitch. I did not iron the edges on here, so I'm just going to sort of fold it under. I'm just not going to do the whole one on here. I'm just going to show you how to blanket stitch, and then we'll move on to putting it together. So I'm going to fold over the edge, and I'm going to go up in that edge so my knot doesn't show. And I really like this variegated. I'm using three strands of regular variegated embroidery floss, and I really liked it because it really gives, because against this natural wood tag background, and against, most of the backgrounds on all of these vintage linens are just a linen color or a natural off-white color. So it just gave a little bit of color around the edges, a little pop of color, as everyone always says on the tags. Let me get this started here so we can keep that crease. Okay, so blanket stitching or buttonhole stitching is one of the most versatile embroidery stitches. If you watch a lot of my videos, you know I use it on a lot of things. It's nice for edges. It makes a nice, you can applique, you can embroidery, you can do faux crochet lace, you can use it to make rugs. It's just a very versatile stitch that you'll find in a lot of different crafts. So how do we do it? So first of all, you just put your needle up there and start. Now you want to make a loop. You're going to come back. So here's the first one. You're going to make a loop with your embroidery floss. I use my finger to hold it. And you're going to come up through your loop. See that loop forming? I have a loop. See the loop? Okay, and my needle and floss are in the middle, inside the middle of that loop of thread. So you're coming up, and I'm going to pull. I'm going to take my finger out there. Pull, and you see how it's inside the loop. It's inside the loop, and there it is. It goes, and you want to pull it flat against your fabric. Come back, space over there. Now you can also do it just on the very top edge, and it would just barely give it like a little outline to it. Okay, so I did that all the way around the little square. Then I did a little tag, and I cut my adhesive, double-sided adhesive. The double-sided adhesive in the clear is important because it has to stick on both sides. So I'm just going to pull off the one side here. Put it down over my little, didn't get it quite lined up, that's okay. And what I've been doing is just really pushing it down, and you really want to get it in the fibers and in the grain of the fabric. Pushing it down on the embroidery, just really working it in there so it's really in there good. And then I'll trim off. Don't use your good sewing scissors because it does stick on here. We're going to, I don't know if you can see, let me see if I can get it to reflect the light there. You can see the little shimmer, that's the adhesive that's on there. Alright, and then we're going to position it. Okay. Now I've just been flipping it over to begin with and just giving a really solid push, and by flipping it over I'm pretty much evenly distributing that. Pushing, and now I'm just going to get right in there where down in the fabric, trying to do between the embroidery to really get those fabric fibers to adhere to the wood. And I'm not going to add anything. I like that flower the way it is, so I'm not going to add anything to that. I'm just going to stick a ribbon through the hole. It doesn't take all that long. I think I did 16 of the outlines, or 14 because 2 of them were paper. So yeah, 14 outlines. I'd already cut out all my little pieces and ironed them earlier in the day, so they were ready to go, and I just spent that time doing that, and it was really fun. I think probably the longest part of it was getting all my linens out, laying everything out, trying to figure out. I laid the little square down over pieces, parts of the vintage linens, determining what I wanted to use, and then cutting those little pieces, and then I ironed everything, and then putting everything back up. And so that was probably the longest part of it, was the planning part. Sit and do the sewing part of it, and so it was fun. It didn't take long since it's just a simple blanket stitch, and I just made probably all of them I made in about an hour or so. So that is my craft involving vintage linens that didn't involve much sewing. You don't even have to do the outline blanket stitching. You could use lace and glue lace around too, maybe with a hot glue gun too. You could use lace and outline it instead of doing the blanket stitching. But the blanket stitching is pretty simple once you practice. But these were really fun little gift tags that I'm excited to use, and another way to use up the vintage linens and give them a new life on a product that is otherwise too damaged, stained, or holes to use for its actual. So this has been Angie from Canterbury Trails Farm, and I hope you enjoyed our vintage linens gift tags. Bye!